If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. No Sasquatch were harmed in the recording of this podcast.
This is Wolfgang with Bigfoot Crossroads, speaking with Matt tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Wolfgang Moser.
Hello. Nice to see you or hear from you.
What's going on? Power outage?
Just the power went out, and I thought I heard something nearby, and then helicopters were flying over, and I was like, dang, that kind of spoils the podcast. but I think we're going to be all right now.
Aliens.
Yes. You hear about it all the time.
So, what do you want to talk about? Bigfoot?
Yeah, you know what? I did think of something, not since, we're going to be beating a dead horse here, the Patterson-Gimlin film footage. I would like to talk about that.
Okay.
Because recently a friend of mine contacted me, or I contacted him. I showed him some things that we got in at the auction house, and he's a huge fan of 2001: Space Odyssey. And I showed him that we have one of the astronaut outfits, and he was like, and he's a Bigfoot guy. He's like, too bad you didn't, have one of the ape suits. And I went on to explain to him that even if we had one of the ape suits, it would be in such a deteriorated condition that even if it were to be restored, it wouldn't be the same ape suit anymore. It would be mostly the restored stuff.
Right.
And he says, you mean to tell me that if it was a man in the suit with the Patterson-Gimlin footage, that it would, it would not look the same? I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you couldn't prove, even if a suit did come up, if a suit came to light, you couldn't match it in any way. It's just the way of foam latex and hair and spandex and stuff like that. Now, personally, I have a lot of respect for Bill Munns. He's a special makeup artist for the industry. And his Munns report was pretty thorough, if you ask me. And if you compare that, the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot with like the ape suits that were coming out around that time in movies, which would have been John Chambers and the Planet of the Apes. They showed in Beneath the Planet of the Apes a bunch of apes in the sauna, and they look so ridiculous. And if you would have seen one of those Beneath the Planet of the Apes walking across that sandbar with that suit on, you would have instantly known that it was a guy in a suit. With the Patterson-Gimlin footage, the Patty creature, you see the mass, you see the muscle. You couldn't do that back then. They could barely do it now. They can do it now, but you have to have such an astronomical budget just for the suits, And these two cowboys, there is no way in hell they had the money to pull that off.
I've heard people talk about, Roger Patterson having connections or whatever in Hollywood, but people don't understand. You're not talking about just having a connection or being buddies with somebody.
Yeah.
That would have been the state of the art makeup and materials available at the time. And the budget for that would have been insane.
Yeah. Not to mention the film processing, the actual trip itself, the amount of materials and supplies that you needed for a trip like that. And just to me, it sounds like a whole lot of no fun,
For no payoff.
Yeah, for no payoff. I realized that, people are still looking for a get rich quick scheme with Bigfoot. That's why you have all the hoaxers, they get the hits on TikTok or YouTube or whatever for their very brief hoax that usually gets uncovered pretty quickly. But you know, I mean, it's not making anybody rich.
I mean, if there's a way to do it, I haven't found it yet.
Exactly. So
somebody this past week posted a video that caught my attention. They tagged me in the post, so I saw that. But the video itself, I won't say the name of the YouTube channel, but it's from Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
And this particular couple, I assume they're a couple. It's a man and a woman. They're Hispanic, and their entire channel is geared towards a Hispanic audience. The whole thing's in Spanish.
Yeah.
I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what the descriptions are, but I can put two and two together with the titles.
Right.
So in this particular video, they come across a very large skeleton, a humanoid skeleton, definitely bipedal, has a human-like skull, but it's, much larger than, it could be a large human, but, they got out a tape measure. Of course, again, speaking Spanish, I have no idea what the measurements were, what they were saying, but you could tell that, it's supposed to be a Bigfoot skeleton is the whole deal.
Right.
And they're in the woods of Oklahoma, supposedly. It's kind of, piled underneath the leaves and looks a little dirty and everything. They did a completely clear, video. They have some not professional grade, but a very high-end camera, everything's clear. To me, looked a little fake, looked a little plasticky, some sort of resin maybe.
Yeah.
But I just went back and I started going through their videos. I found in their video catalog that they had just everything was Bigfoot. Like everything they were doing was Bigfoot. I guess they're Bigfooters. I don't know. I found a couple of other videos that had actual footage of Bigfoot in it that they had captured while out in the woods. Clearly a person in a very bad costume. No question in my mind. Once I saw, okay, well, they're hoaxing videos, so this is just another hoax video, obviously.
Yeah.
Plus, there hadn't been any local news articles about a couple finding a Bigfoot skeleton in the woods and posting it on YouTube with all these views. So then I start looking back further in their catalog, and then you see what happens. They had been doing outdoor videos where they go hiking and exploring and stuff. And all those videos, were doing okay, a few thousand views. But then after about a year or so, for some reason, they posted a Bigfoot video. And as soon as they did that, their numbers jumped. That video got more views than anything they'd ever done before. And now it's nothing but Bigfoot, 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 Bigfoot,
Yeah.
Bigfoot. And that happens a lot. People stumble into it on YouTube, and they get a whole bunch of hits. And then they just start faking Bigfoot stuff because they want the views. Yeah.
They obviously seem legit because they did have a genuine outdoorsman YouTube channel, and then they come up with one thing and they see how successful it was, and then bam, So yeah, I'm sure that they're making money from that, and it sucks, but it happens to a lot of serious Bigfooters too, in my opinion. They'll capture something good, and we all know that there's something there to it, and it's exciting, and then they just have to get more, and they're not getting more, and they end up hoaxing shit.
I mean, that's what a lot of people think happened with Paul Freeman.
Yeah,
with the Freeman footage. I don't know. I think Danny Sweeten was another person. I believe his story. I think he was in Texas. He captured footage of a possible Bigfoot, and nobody believed him. And then so he goes and gets more evidence, and it can be frustrating though. I would never do it, but I understand it.
Yeah. And it sucks for the people that are doing it right, you know, like that are they're very scientific about it, like Kane Michael, you know. I mean, I believe everything that guy comes out with because, you know, I mean, I was at his house and I experienced something there at that cabin. And I know that he's got stuff going on his property. I mean, there's just absolutely no doubt about it. So, like, it sucks for people like him that, you know, they have a good lead, they have good material, they have good evidence, and then you have these other people, just kooky people that they're all about just getting hits, you know.
Well, you have some experience in the film industry. We don't have to dive into that, but as you know, there's a lot of good films out there that nobody ever sees and never makes any money.
Sure.
Because they're not flashy and they don't have the big names and everything.
Right.
And I think the same thing happens in the Bigfoot world. You do have somebody like Kane Michael, who gets amazing evidence. He's got a lot of stuff going on. He's very diligent, very thorough, smart guy. Not associated with any big groups.
No.
He's not, you know, speaking at a bunch of big conferences or anything. He's not selling books.
Right.
Nobody knows who he is. Nobody sees his evidence, and it's not, you know, he's not, you know, having these huge sightings on video or anything, you know. He's just putting out the material on his own channel.
Yeah.
And it sucks that he's not getting more recognition, but that happens time and time again.
For sure. Who knows? I mean, there are probably lots of people just like him that are doing the same thing and getting actual results. And, you know,
I mean, people like the stories.
Of course.
You know,
I mean, I like the stories.
Yeah. And then whenever it comes to the stories, you know, the more violent or, you know, if it has a little bit of action, you know, once again, action movies are the big blockbuster movies.
Sure.
Those shows seem to be more popular.
Right.
So what did you experience at Kane's house? I'm actually going to have Kane on very soon. I'm supposed to record with him next week.
Oh, great. When I camped at, I'm trying to think and remember what year it was, but it wasn't that long ago, maybe 3 years if I had to guess. And, you know, every once in a while, Eric would give me a call and be like, hey, you want to go camping with Kane and I? And I'd be like, I either could or couldn't, you know, but this time I could. And we had a good camping night out, but didn't have anything go down, like nothing. This was like close to his cabin, like up on a hill. And nothing really happened that night. We just had a really good time camping. And when it came time to leave, I said goodbye to them in the cabin. And I was walking to my car, or my truck, I should say, popped open the trunk to put all my camping gear back in. And I knew that they were still in the cabin, you know. And I heard, you know, that, I don't know if you watched his recent video where he's just sitting there talking and there's that loud tree break that sounds like a shotgun going off.
Yeah.
Well, that happened in the same exact direction where he pointed to. Like, it was in that exact same direction. So I was like, I contacted him right away. I was like, Kane, that's exactly the direction where you're pointing at is where I heard that tree break happen just as I was leaving. At first, I thought they were messing with me, and then logic sets in because these guys don't play games. I mean, they have never like tried to fool me. They're dead serious about that stuff. We joke about other stuff, but when it comes to boogers, we're pretty dead serious about it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it gets serious in a hurry.
Of course, it was just a tree break, but still, like, what caused that to happen? Because, like, like it's even sounded in that video that he put up on Facebook. It sounded like a gun going off, and it scared me or startled me the same way it startled him in that video.
I mean, we all know what a dead tree limb sounds like falling out of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a definite difference whenever something snaps a tree limb.
Yeah.
And this was after you were like walking out to the car at nighttime or out to your truck?
Broad daylight, man.
Oh, wow.
It was broad daylight. I mean, I was just packing my truck. It was in the morning, I was, packing up to go leave, and bam.
Guess they're saying goodbye or something.
I guess. Or like, what were you doing here? Because you're not a usual denizen of this area,
Yeah. That's weird. Some people that I used to associate with, some colleagues, they're friends of mine, Dan and Vicky.
Mm-hmm.
They had a place right down the road from where they lived that they called Booger Bottoms.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go out there. I mean, it was, 5 minutes from their house. Not far at all. So they would go out there all the time. And they would get more activity whenever they took company with them out there.
Yeah.
It seemed that these things got used to them being there and kind of didn't really care anymore, would just go about their own thing. But if they took a stranger down there, these things would be curious, assuming it was Bigfoot. We always make that assumption, but it was just weird because strangers go down there and oftentimes they would just bring somebody new with them just to get some activity kicked up. I just find it interesting because of some of the stuff that, Kane's getting into at his place. I'm not trying to give, spoiler alert, but he's got some sort of interaction going on with something.
Yeah. And
I'm curious if that would continue if it was somebody else involved, or if it is a Bigfoot, if it has somehow formed this relationship with Kane and trusts him enough to be doing whatever it is that it's doing.
He did tell me one time about a friend that he had over, and things ramped up in the area, and it was somebody that didn't normally come over. So maybe that is the case.
How smart do you think these things are?
I think they're very smart. I think they're smarter than what we give them.
In your situation, reflecting back on it now, I mean, do you think those things that it was doing were calculated? Do they seem more intelligent based or animal based now that you're looking back all these years later and know a little bit more about it?
I think both. I think a mix of human and ape, and just being wood smart, obviously. But I think that they're very strategic in what they do. And that may not be considered smart, but I think that there has to be some sort of intelligence involved with that. It can't just be a primordial instinct or whatever. I do think that there has to be. I'm to the point where I'm just assuming that they have meetings about, how to deal with people with guns. I think that there is that sort of communication that goes on. And if there's a such thing as different tribes or whatever throughout North America, that the word, travels fast about how to deal with people and their cell phones and their cameras and all that. I think something is going on with them as far as that's concerned.
There's always a lot of debate about stick structures, limb formations, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, it has to be something that I think had to be manipulated by a hand to make.
For sure.
Not something that can just happen on its own. I don't look at tree bows unless the tree is bowed over and actually pinned to the ground by something else.
Correct.
X formations, I don't really look at those unless the limbs involved in the X are actually pushed down into the ground on their ends.
And there are other things in the area that sort of support that as well.
Right.
That bow could be pointing to another structure or whatever.
Right.
Or a water source, or we even saw a weaving in a tree once, and clearly was not caused by the wind. It was either a human or a Bigfoot that weaved something this way, and we were in an elevated area, so far away from the the path of the trail that, it could have been human, of course, but why? What would be the purpose? What's your motivation for making this weave in this tree?
Right.
It seems more likely that something else did this, not a person.
Well, then you have these repeated limb formations that you find in areas where you're investigating Bigfoot that has a history of sightings.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that really, coincidental that you don't find them other places. Now, naturally, you find certain things other places. But a lot of times it's because people mistake man-made objects for Bigfoot-created objects. A lot of teepee formations, for instance, are just the result of humans. Certain shelter structures are the result of humans. Mm-hmm. So naturally, you're going to see those everywhere. But specifically talking about tree twists and things like that, they happen in areas that have reported Bigfoot activity.
That's right.
So at that point, if I see a limb formation, let's say a tree bent over and pinned to the ground by something, by another large tree limb, or, an asterisk type pattern of sticks in a formation on the ground.
Yeah.
If I see one of those in Oklahoma, and then somebody shows me a picture of one in California,
and it's nearly identical the way it's position,
and it's nearly identical. At that point, you're talking about at least a very rudimentary form of language.
Exactly.
That is being created geographically completely separate by two different individuals.
Yeah. It takes intelligence.
It takes intelligence, and it takes that to have been taught to them by someone.
Right.
Like we, learn languages from our parents and from speaking it and everything at school, but it's taught to us.
Sure.
I mean, there's no way that they're born with that information.
Mm-hmm. Imagine the amount of time that these things have out there to do this stuff. I mean, it's not like they're watching movies or doing the things that we do that, we're so preoccupied with. They have plenty of time to communicate and do these things to, for the betterment of their existence.
Well, to have a language of any kind, that means they've been around for a really long time, or all came from the same group at some point in history and separated and passed that information along in the different separated groups. But just that alone blows my mind.
Right.
That's not an animal.
And let's just face the facts. These things obviously see or smell the trail cams long ways off. And they, for whatever reason, have the intelligence to avoid them.
So is that another situation, do you think, where I'm a firm believer that they don't know what the cameras do? I can't, if you're talking about they know what a camera does,
what a photo is, yeah,
then that's something entirely different. That's skipping a few steps in my mind.
Yeah, I don't think any have seen the Patterson-Gimlin footage.
No, I don't think so. But something out of place, has the scent of man all over it, not natural.
Right.
They used to, back whenever people first started using them, a big bright flash would go off because you were just using film cameras. They didn't even have night vision capabilities built into them at all. They weren't digital, so these boxes strapped to the side of a tree would flash in the middle of the night if something walked by it. So I'm sure that they saw that.
Correct.
Do you think they could have at least started sharing that information to others to, hey, watch out, these things might be strapped to a tree and do something?
Mm-hmm. I can only assume that.
We're approaching late September. September 21st will be the 20th anniversary of my initial Bigfoot sighting.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Well, I kind of wanted to go over my sighting and some of the other stuff I've experienced and get your take on it.
Yeah. Oh, I would love to hear it. And actually, the last time we spoke on a podcast was about just that. The next time, I'd like to hear more about your experiences.
20 years, September 21st.
Take me to the day or even the day before. What was life like? What were you doing?
Bigfoot was still new. I had just recently started going out with this group of people.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I was solidly on the fence. I had heard enough from these people that I was getting to know fairly well that I trusted what they were saying. But even though I thought that Bigfoot is probably real, I didn't realize how much I doubted it internally, to be completely honest.
Right.
We were in Sulphur, Oklahoma, at the Chickasaw National Recreation Area. It's, I think, the only national park in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And we had gone out the night before on a Friday night, and we had gone to this area that I would later come to know as the bathhouse. The bathhouse was just a creek in this area that was open for public hunting. Nobody ever went there at night. We were the only people there that night. And that night, I experienced some strange things for sure. There was a pretty big group of us. We were just kind of on a dead end that stopped with the creek on one side of us and the trees on the other. Just a single lane, but we had enough room to park cars on each side. And something was throwing rocks from the woods into the creek on the other side of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to, like, at different times, you could just kind of look up at the sky between the trees and actually see rocks going over our heads and hitting the creek. At one point, I spoke of Dan earlier. Dan was there, Dan and Vicky, and
mm-hmm.
something, I don't know what, we thought it was a very large rock. It was a huge thud. You could feel it hit the ground. It was in the tall grass, kind of off to our side, but we didn't see anything. But it was a loud enough commotion that Dan drew his sidearm. We kind of got closer at that point to the vehicles. Didn't spread out so much. Basically, shit was getting real at that point. I was standing by a vehicle talking to a buddy of mine facing the woods. And a rock, no bigger than, say, your fingernail, hit the hood of the car that we were leaned against. And it hit the hood, bounced up, and hit me in the stomach and fell back down on the hood, coming from the trees.
Yeah.
Now, this is a tiny rock. At that point, I don't have any idea what to think. Because in my mind, and this is something that I get on to people about, people will say, well, it couldn't have been a person because no people go there, but yet you're a person and you're there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I know it's kind of hypocritical of me. I'm a person and I'm there, but in my mind, there's no way that's a person. There can't be a person out there. There just can't. I mean, we're at least a mile off of the main road. You have to take a dirt road to get back off in there. It's pretty late at night. Yeah, I mean, any car coming down there, you're going to hear it.
Who goes out there without flashlights and you know that people have guns?
Yeah,
forget it.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it isn't making any sense. It's also not making any sense that something can throw a tiny rock through the woods and make it out, you know?
Yeah.
It takes some accuracy. Or something's closer than it seems. And I mean, we strained all night, man.
Yeah.
We're all looking out there, night vision and everything else, and can't see anything. Never saw any movement or anything. But the rockets in it, I knew it's either a Bigfoot or a person. I mean, it takes a hand to throw something.
It may have been much higher up than what you thought.
It could have been. It probably was. So that was Friday night. So that was playing in the back of my head. The next day, it's Saturday, regular day. We go running around looking at different spots or whatever and hearing different stories about the area. We've got some local people with us that are into Bigfoot. That's why we were down there. Now, this park has a history of Bigfoot activity, a history of Bigfoot sightings.
Right.
Not just from Bigfooters, but like I said, it's a national park. It's very popular in the summertime for campers. And tourists had made different Bigfoot reports over the years.
Yeah.
So you have a very weird situation because, like, that's not typical. Like, people just don't think that it's possible that, Bigfoot would come around all these people during tourist season. But in this area, it seems to be the case. So in this park, there's a nature center. It's just like a little public building. They've got some displays. They've got a few animals like snakes and stuff that you can find in the park, in big terrariums and stuff to look at. You can buy books, brochures, whatever. And it's at the trailhead to a series of different trails. And out in front of this nature center is, of course, a parking lot that's kind of in a U shape. There's a center area that's grassy and has a patch of woods. But there's woods wrapping all the way around the parking lot and back behind the nature center building. And we're in this parking lot. And the story was that at night, Bigfoot has been seen raiding trash cans in that nature center parking lot.
Yeah.
Of course, the night before I have the rock throwing, I'm thinking the second night, okay, last night we were in the woods. Tonight we're not. We're in a parking lot. But I get that we're in the woods, but I'm in a parking lot. There's like street lights and stuff. It's well lit up. Like, why are we here? I don't get it.
Yeah.
There's a large group of us. We're kind of separated into different groups. One of the people that I'm there with is kind of off to the side, standing at the edge of the parking lot. He's got a Gen 3 night vision scope. He's kind of scanning the woods. Now, during the night, we had heard sounds off and on. We had smelled a foul odor, kind of skunky every now and then that would come and go. So there were things going on, but nothing that I was getting excited about.
Right.
Most of the group had moved on, and I was just kind of back with this guy because I was told that we, stay with someone, don't separate. We're in a parking lot. I'm the rookie basically, so I'm just doing what I'm told basically. He kind of stops, yells at me, "Hey, come over here. Tell me if you see what I'm seeing." So I'm looking through the night vision. He's trying to guide me. I can kind of like see his finger through the scope, and he's like pointing this way towards the trees at an angle. Inside the tree line, I don't know how far, 25 yards maybe from where I'm standing, I see these bright, shining eyes looking straight forward at me. My mind is trying to process what I'm looking at. Like, is that a deer? Is that an owl? What am I looking at here?
Mm-hmm.
And I focus in on the eyes and see that surrounding the eyes is a face, part of a face. There's a tree limb, like a small tree limb that's kind of cutting off the bottom part of the face just below the mouth. I don't see the chin, in other words. And there's another tree limb going across the top of the head, so I can't see the very top of the head, but I'm seeing everything in between just perfectly clear. I mean, I still see it in my head, you know?
Yeah.
20 years later, 20 years later, I can still see it in my head.
Yeah, it's life-changing because you have, you know, it's just not anything you've seen before. So
right.
It's shocking.
So some of the things that really stood out, it's got a heavy brow ridge, this thing that I'm looking at. The brow ridge is farthest out at the middle, like between the eyes, not on the outsides. It's not like a uniform thing. It's like kind of tapered off towards the sides. Hair is growing from the brow ridge up backwards over the top of the head. To me, it kind of had this old Lon Chaney Wolfman appearance to it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
The cheekbones are high set and really pronounced. The eyes are sunken in very deep. The eyes are reflecting brightly in the night vision, but they look almond shaped, almost teardrop. If the tears are sideways with the more rounded part in the middle, it was so weird. They were too big and farther apart than they should be. The jawline was visible and broad and muscular and was actually wider than the cheekbones and the top of the head. The mouth was wide with thin lips. The bottom lip was bigger than the top, and it looked like it had sort of an underbite. I didn't see any teeth or anything, but it just had an underbite appearance to it. The nose, very much like a human's. The bridge was more scooped. It wasn't very pronounced at all. It was thinner compared to the nostrils. The nostrils were slightly upturned, but not much, just more so than a human. Very broad. How we have like a tip on the end of our nose. This didn't have like a really pronounced tip at all.
Mm-hmm.
The hair was basically, if a man grew the facial hair out, that's what it was like. It wasn't around the eyes. It, mustache, beard, cheeks a little bit. But otherwise, that was it. The hair was definitely thicker from the brow ridge up. There was not like a bare forehead like you see with Harry and the Hendersons.
Mm-hmm.
And the head looked very sloped backwards. Now, to me, the top of the head was obscured by the tree limb, so I couldn't really tell.
Right.
But it didn't look like it was going conical. It looked more rounded from what I could tell. I didn't see any ears. It's kind of an ongoing joke with me. Nobody ever sees their ears.
Yeah.
I've talked to one person that said they saw their ears.
And you have to wonder then if it's like a balding Bigfoot or something like that. You know, where you could see the ears.
Yeah, I don't know. But this one was I couldn't tell size. I didn't see a body or anything like that. Just that part of the face. And it was staring right back towards us. So I looked at it from, it seems like forever. It was probably 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled the night vision scope down. I keep in mind I'm a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the first thing I noticed is as soon as I pull the scope down, I can't see anything. Like, I'm blinded.
Yeah.
And I look at Robert. That was the guy I was with. And I was like, is that a face? And he's like, that's what I saw. I saw a face. So I'm not crazy, And I'm like, putting the night vision back up to my face and looking again, and it's just gone.
Yeah.
There was never any sound, no nothing, no movement. It's just gone. And I could see where it was, like, the formation of the limbs or whatever, and the gap that I had seen the face in. But the gap was now closed much more by the limb that was going across the bottom. So I've always kind of thought that it was holding the limb down to like peek through at us and let go of the limb, and the limb came back up after it left.
And it wasn't moving that much whenever you were looking right at it, probably because I do think that these things just stay super still in the forest when there are people around, in order just to avoid detection. So I think that, it's probably saw you put the thing down or whatever, or saw you look away anyway, and that's when it exited,
Yeah. I don't know, man. The first thing that impacted me later on, because for a long time it was just processing.
Yeah.
Going through the Rolodex of what it could have possibly been. What, did I just hallucinate? But Robert asked me over there to look at it because he saw the same thing. Yeah.
That's awesome that you had, a witness.
Yeah. That helped out a lot.
That you could verify each other's, experience or encounter.
Yeah. And actually, I think I posted it. I submitted it to Bobby Short's website, Bigfoot Encounters, like probably in the next week. Because we came home and everything, and we used to meet up in a voice chat on the internet. And the next voice chat that we met up, I talked to Robert and I was like, hey, because at the time I'm a researcher and I'm with a group and everything, but we don't have a database. And I was like, should I report this somewhere? Like, what do I do with this? And he sent me to Bobby Short's website, and that's kind of how I met her, and submitted my report. It's still there. I actually, but it's just crazy to think that's 20 years ago. But one of the big things that stood out in my head whenever I saw it was that it didn't look like what Bigfoot is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Like I had seen like drawings and movies and stuff, and that's definitely what.
There has to be such a variety in how they look anyway, like we do.
Yeah, there's got to be. But what's funny, we were talking about Kane and his research buddy Eric. So the first time I met those guys on the internet was on their a YouTube channel. I think they posted a YouTube video.
Right.
And Eric was giving his sighting. He had a sighting, and he was describing the sighting on the video, and I was listening to it, and he's just naming detail after detail after detail of the same thing that I saw whenever he was describing it. And I was just like, oh my God, very rarely does that ever happen. And like, right now I'm having trouble even thinking of anyone else that I've heard describe it using the same details that I had. But Eric definitely did, and that's what got my attention. Yeah. And I had an artist friend do kind of a rendering of what I saw, as close as he could get anyways. And what was interesting about that was Eric posted a picture of my rendering and had made the comment like, this is the closest thing I've ever seen to the one that I saw. And I'm like, dude, that was mine.
Yeah, I think I know which painting you're talking about. That looked awesome.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Not exact.
Who's the artist for that? Do you remember?
Yeah. His website is actually called satanfudge.com.
Okay.
Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. Check it out for sure if you want to see a bunch of cool images of Bigfoot. I post them from time to time on different graphics and stuff. But there's actually more to that story. That's where things start getting tricky. That wasn't the only thing I saw that night. In that same area, at the front entrance of the parking lot, there's a trail that parallels the road and then curves back off towards the nature center direction, going back off into the woods. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm with another group of people. It's a little while after that happened, and somebody again is like, this woman I was standing next to, she's like looking down this trail, and she's like, what the hell is that? And I look down this trail, and I don't know what it is. All I can tell you is there's something on the trail that's very large, and it was a full moon that night. And the moon's like coming down through the tree limbs. And it looks like something, oh, this is so crazy. It looks like something's in the dark, and you can kind of see the moonlight hitting like what looks like the top of a head that just kind of slowly pulled back into the shadows. And I mean, freaking slowly. And then it looked like part of a foot lifts up off the trail and pulls back into the shadow. But it's on a trail. I'm looking down a trail.
Yeah.
It's perfectly clear, but this thing is just dark in the trail. Well, this car starts coming down the road, and there's a curve that the road takes right there at the entrance. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, this car is going to come down this road, and whenever it goes around that curve, its headlights are going to be on this thing, whatever it is. So if something's there, I'm going to see it. If something's not there, I'm going to know it. So I'm just standing there staring down this trail. This thing's probably 30 feet down the trail. It's not far down the trail. The car's coming. Headlights start panning. Crash, crash. Just, I mean, a huge crash off to the left of the trail. Headlights pan across, nothing's there, and you hear something run for maybe 30 yards, 50 yards at the most through the trees and stuff, and then just stop. And we're just standing there like, oh my God, what was that? I can now see, I mean,
yeah,
it's like night and day looking down the trail. They're like, I can see way far down the trail now. So something was there. I mean, it has to have been.
Yeah. That's frightening.
We went back later with the night vision scope, and I had my friend walk down the trail to where this thing was at, whatever it was. And there was this, like I said, whenever it looked like a head slowly pulling back into the darkness, there was a tree limb right there. And I mean, this tree limb was less than a foot above the top of this thing, if that was really what I was seeing. And looking at my friend underneath that tree limb through the night vision from the same position, that tree limb was almost twice as tall as him. And he's a shorter guy. He's like, 5'5", but still, that puts it close to 10 foot.
Exactly. That's still a big something.
But I mean, twice in one night. I mean, who's going to believe that?
It was the area, right? The general area.
I mean, 90% of my Bigfoot stuff occurred in that park.
Yeah.
Over the course of the next 7-8 years.
Well, 90% of the Bigfoot stuff that happened with me happened within a mile of my parents' old home. So it just happened to be a very active area, I guess.
I mean, Salt Fork, it's famous for it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to think. A lot of things happen in that park. There's actually a location, I've told this story numerous times about thinking I almost poked one with a stick. I had a walking stick, and I don't know. I've told the story. I'm sure people can find it, but that area that we were at has kind of like a little picnic area next to a creek, and there's a rock formation there, kind of a natural rock wall that surrounds the picnic area. And on this one outcropping, there's this face carved into the rock. And I mean, it looks like a very primitive carving of a Bigfoot face.
Yeah.
And people there call it Squatch Rock. That's the nickname of the rock because of that face. Even the rock outcropping itself, the way the rock is, it kind of makes the shape of a Bigfoot head and everything. probably why the face was carved there. But
Sure.
of course, there's an old legend that goes with it. The local tribe there used that area as a corral for their horses, and Bigfoot was coming and killing the horses at night. Would come and take a horse and drag it off into the woods or something. So the medicine man did something and carved that face in the rock, which trapped the soul of the Bigfoot into the rock, and they never lost any more horses. But I'm saying it's a local legend. It's well known. Like the people that I knew that showed me this formation that I was researching with have, lived there forever. Their families were all from the town, and that carving had been there as long as anybody knew. Nobody really knew the origin for it. Well, now we advance to modern day, and that park has its own Facebook page.
Yeah.
So I sent the Facebook page a message. I sent them a picture of the rock carving, and I asked them if they had any knowledge about the history of this rock carving. And I mean, keep in mind, everybody knows about this rock. It's at a picnic area. People take pictures with it. I've got a picture with it,
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people see it. The creek that it's next to is extremely popular for swimming and stuff. Lots of people visit there. Millions each year.
Right.
Let me read to you their response.
Okay.
Hi, Matthew. We have not had anyone ask about the carving before, and we aren't sure how old the vandalism is. It looks like it's in travertine rock, which is relatively soft, so it might not be very old. All I did was ask, hey,
yeah,
do you happen to know, the story behind this rock carving?
Right.
I find it kind of odd that they referred to it as vandalism and mentioned that it's probably not very old.
Right.
I'm like, well, it's at least 20 years old. I can tell you that matter of factly, which I guess isn't that old in terms of rock carvings, but nobody's ever mentioned it, and they had no knowledge of it existing. Really? Huh.
I mean, I've spoken with forest rangers before, and they quickly throw that out. Right. They just immediately exit the conversation as soon as possible whenever there's a mention of Bigfoot,
Well, there was a park ranger at that park that knew exactly what we were doing in the park.
Yeah.
And she was very nice. And if there was a tourist or a camper or whatever that had a sighting, she would tell us about it. She would unlock gates and let us into closed off camping areas so we could go back there and investigate, when nobody else would be back there. And just 1 week out of nowhere, they transferred her to a different park. Never heard from her again.
Yeah.
They bring in another guy to replace her, and he came from, I don't remember which park it was, but he said Northern California.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's kind of peculiar. Like bringing a guy from Northern California all the way to Oklahoma, and he works the graveyard shift by himself in this park.
This could be a whole other conversation, a whole other podcast about cover up. Honestly, it's hard to tell like what they're told, whatever, because obviously something's going on.
Yeah, that same park. My research partner, before I knew him, he was already investigating in the park, and the area that was his prime research area suddenly got closed off. 1 year they fenced it off where you couldn't get in there anymore, and said it was for road improvements, and kept it closed for 6 months and never did any road improvements.
Right.
So I don't know. The same park has also done, I know that especially here in Oklahoma, I know this will sound crazy to people out in California, but in Oklahoma they do prescribed burns. They'll intentionally set the woods on fire.
Yeah.
And there's a large area that's very active, known by all the locals and everything there, that has a lot of cedar trees, and they did a prescribed burn in that area and got rid of the cedar trees. Said that it was an invasive species, which is kind of weird because it's not. It creates a habitat, but so I don't know, man. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't.
Yeah, we were unable to get to Bluff Creek when we traveled to Willow Creek because of some tree disease that was going on. Like, so they blocked it off. It was all gated off. So, traveled pretty far just to get to Bluff Creek and could not get to Bluff Creek, which really sucked. But I was still happy to be in the general area. But you have to wonder, obviously, there's a certain amount of precautions that they take with the forest and making sure that, that the trees are protected. But at the same time, it's like, really? I mean, am I gonna step on something that like somehow contaminates an area? I mean, I guess it's possible, but come on, why'd you block off Bluff Creek? God damn it.
Right now, you can't wait a week.
Right? Exactly.
That's like a Clark Griswold moment.
It truly was.
Sorry, folks, Bluff Creek is closed. Wow.
That was just it. But it was a good time nonetheless. That was my Bigfoot road trip. Drove all the way up north. Actually went to Trinidad and went through all the forests, the tall trees. And of course stopped, what town is it? Where Mike Rugg's shop is. Anyway, he has a nice little shop there, and like if you ever drive through there, it absolutely is a must to stop by and say hi to that guy because he's such a nice guy.
That's the Bigfoot Discovery Museum, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
There's so much history in that place.
Yeah, there is. It's tiny, but just in the I went there a couple of times. But there's always people walking in and out of that place, so it stays pretty busy, I think. Of course, I visited Steve Strufer at Bigfoot Books. He has a vast collection of literature.
Books.
Books. I mean, not just Bigfoot related, obviously. I mean, and it smells great in there, of course. Gotta love the smell of an old bookstore.
So Kane is coming on next week. That's the plan, anyways. He wasn't available to record this week because he went to the Mothman Festival. Oh, great. Have you ever been?
I have not been to the festival, but I've been to that area. I've been over, like near where that bridge collapsed, and went to the museum. The museum's actually fantastic. They did a really good job with that museum, and there's a really nice steel sculpture in the center of town there. They really, honestly, they got it right. I mean, they're getting tourists there because of all of that. Minerva should do the same thing. I don't understand why they don't. It's such a small town. Put up, the Minerva monster statue there and get a shop there, and you're going to get so much more business in your town.
I mean, Honubby in Oklahoma is doing it with their Bigfoot Festival every year, and it keeps on growing more and more and more. Dumps a lot of money into the local economy. And then, like you're saying, the Mothman Festival, I think this was the biggest year yet. And, you always see people on social media posting, the picture with the butt of the Mothman statue.
Right.
The sculptist made the Mothman have a actual butt with a butt crack, and people enjoy posing with it for some reason.
I did notice that. I did not take a picture of the butt, though.
What do you think about the Mothman? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a legit thing?
I think it's legit in the minds of people. I mean, I hate, I literally am so skeptical, man. I have a hard time with Dogman and all that stuff. I just don't see how it's possible, but I didn't really think Bigfoot was possible either. I really have to put eyes on things to really believe it,
Yeah.
I'm terrible about this sort of stuff, but I'm wholeheartedly interested, though. You know, like if something comes about, fantastic. Like the whole Nessie thing. I don't know if you've seen the recent articles about Nessie.
I've seen a few. You know, Nessie is something that doesn't seem to want to go away.
No. And they found, what was it, skeleton of,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going to sound like an idiot here because I don't remember what I read about it, but they were claiming that the skeleton was that of whatever species that was, and it was found in an area that was very much like Loch Ness.
Well, I mean, the last time they did like a big test, you know, DNA test or whatever, that came up with an eel. They thought it was some large freshwater eel. That's not what people are seeing, though.
Right.
You know, like there. I'm sure there are large freshwater eels in the loch. However, that doesn't mean that's what people are seeing. And the Loch Ness Monster is something that, you know, while its name is as silly to me as the name Bigfoot, it's been around for a long time. Lake monsters have been around for a long time.
Yeah. Sailors were made fun of for giant squids. Well, guess what? We find giant squids now.
Anytime you have stories of something being seen from the beginning of people, you know, spreading information and reporting things like that, it really intrigues me. Whenever you got Native American stories of these same things existing before, you know, settlers came here, but you have these things that are being seen globally. It's not just like it's a centralized or localized thing. And whenever that happens, to me, that adds validity to it.
Right.
Mothman? I don't know. I love the story. I love the story.
I do too. Yeah, I love the story. I love it's intriguing. It's mysterious.
I did see something one time that, you know, I can't explain, and the best explanation I heard was from another Bigfooter who was from the same area that I saw the thing I saw, and he said that he had seen an owl one day while he was out in the woods that was like 3 to 4 feet tall, standing on the ground. I mean, I don't know what owl gets that big in Texas, but everything's bigger in Texas, so maybe. But if there are giant owls flying around that we don't know about, while it seems very highly unlikely, but I don't know what I saw. To me, that could be a Mothman, a very large owl, like based on the sightings of the actual Mothman. Now, the whole entered cold stuff and the collapsing of the bridge and all that. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there, man. That scares the crap out of me.
Yeah. I have a friend out in California, very credible friend. He's never exaggerated anything. And I told him my Bigfoot story, expecting him to sort of like scoff at it. And he related a story to me about being out in the desert at a party, and a giant bird tried to pick him up and take him away, and he was throwing rocks at it, and he described it as a thunderbird. He never even knew what a thunderbird was until I told him, you know.
Yeah, that's weird. There's a lot of thunderbird type sightings. I've actually been contacted by a few people with thunderbird sightings. If they do exist, I mean, that's another giant creature that's hiding from mankind that everybody should be able to find and see and everything and capture, but we're not able to. I mean,
should be able to see that pretty dang easy, right?
You would think so. I mean, Bigfoot can hide in the woods, but a bird flies around in the sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, like, how does something that big stay hidden? What kind of worms does it eat?
It could be the people are just so preoccupied with their phones that they don't look up in the sky anymore.
That could be it. My personal problem is I'm terrified of birds.
Yeah, you should be.
So,
if they were big enough, they would definitely eat you.
Exactly. So Thunderbirds, no, man. No. I'm not okay with it. Not okay with it at all.
You know what's fascinating is the old newspaper reports that we dig up, about wild men and stuff like that before there was a name for Bigfoot. And it's interesting because obviously, this has been going on I can't imagine what it was like for settlers to come here and come face to face with those things, not knowing, what it was. They were probably more populated as well, Yeah.
So how has it happened that they've been seen and they've been reported for so long, but yet here we are, no answers, no proof, nothing?
Well, I think that there is some proof, but nothing that science will look at. Or if they have looked at it, they were told not to look at it.
I mean, if proof ever comes out, what do you think happens?
I think it'll be about as fantastic as when the information came out from the CIA about the UFOs, the federal agency. But it's just going to be another day, and Justin Bieber misbehaved.
Right. I was going to say, so you think that it'll be breaking news and people will not go to work that day and the entire country will shut down?
Some people will be like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. And that's going to be the extent of it. The people like us are going to be like, wow, finally, but honestly, it's just not going to be as exciting as we wished it would be, Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody about that, about how I know that people have talked about how nice it would be for Bigfoot to be proven for the vindication of all the witnesses out there.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, the UFO thing. So there's people vindicated now, and I'm sorry, I'm sorry for those people because, man, that sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. It does suck.
Go tell somebody told you, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd imagine people like Travis Walton are just kind of over it anyway. It's like, you know what? I don't need your approval. I don't need your opinion. I know what happened. I was there.
Well, could the government actually just at least act enthused or something? Act surprised, something?
I'm surprised by the government every day.
I mean, they act like they're going over the weekly budget or something whenever they talk about it,
I know.
We'll put together a committee or something, whatever.
Yeah, right. I do feel like it would be a hindrance on the national parks. If people knew that those things were out there, it would sell less tickets, or, less people would get out in the forest if they knew that there were violent ones anyway,
Yeah.
But which is crazy talk, because your chances of encountering a shitty human are far greater than a Bigfoot. Even bears are probably not even an issue, in most cases.
Oh, comparatively speaking, statistically, yeah.
Compared to people, people out there trying to rob you or whatever,
right. You're gonna have a worse time at Starbucks,
Let's not even talk about Deliverance, situation where you definitely want a gun, not a bow and arrow.
And I mean, like you just said, you didn't get to go to Bluff Creek because of some tree disease. So what happens while they try to figure out Bigfoot populations?
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right, Wolfgang, thank you so much for joining me this evening and talking with me about this subject that we both find fascinating. Hopefully you'll be joining me in the future to do more of the same.
Absolutely. We'll do it again soon.
All right, man. And if you've had your own encounter that you would like to share with me, or maybe come on the show and share with the listeners, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check me out on Instagram at Bigfoot Crossroads. And if you get a chance, check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.